I was sitting on my couch working on my laptop with the screen reader narrating text in that familiar robotic voice when I heard the key slide into the lock. My heart did that little flutter it always does when Callum comes home early from work. I smiled, saved my document, and turned toward the door. "Hey babe, you're home early!" But the voice that answered wasn't Callum's. "Hey Thea!" My blood went cold. That was Garrett's voice. And behind it, I heard Vincent's laugh, that particular chuckle that had started making my skin crawl months ago. 2 sets of footsteps entered my apartment. My apartment. The door clicked shut behind them. "Callum's not home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound casual even though my hands had already started to shake. "He won't be back until after 5. "We know," Vincent said. I could hear them moving closer, settling onto my couch like they owned the place. "We actually wanted to talk to you, alone." The way he said alone made something twist in my stomach. What happened next? The conversation they had, the things they said while laughing like it was all some hilarious joke. That's when I knew. This wasn't awkwardness. This wasn't guys being stupid. This was danger. But here's what Garrett and Vincent didn't know that afternoon, as they sat in my living room talking about how easy it would be to rape me. I had already made a decision that would change everything. I just didn't know how soon I'd need to act on it. "My name is Thea. I'm 24 years old. I've been blind since I was 16. And this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones we invite into our homes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up in that moment, trapped in my own living room with 2 men who thought my blindness made me easy prey, you need to know how we got there. You need to know about Callum, about how much I loved him, and about how trust can sometimes become the most dangerous thing you possess. I met Callum 3 years ago at a friend's birthday party. I was 21, he was 28, and I was standing alone near the kitchen island trying to figure out which drink was mine when I heard his voice for the first time. "The one on your left is yours, Corona with lime. The one on your right belongs to some guy who's been gone for 20 minutes, so I'm pretty sure it's abandoned." I laughed, reached for the left bottle, and that was it. We talked for 3 hours straight that night. He didn't treat me like I was fragile or helpless. He didn't talk louder like blindness affected my hearing, didn't grab my arm without asking, didn't finish my sentences. He just talked to me like I was a person, like I was Thea, not that blind girl. By our 3rd date, I knew I was in love with him. Callum was patient in all the ways that mattered. He learned that I needed him to announce when he was leaving a room so I wouldn't talk to empty air. He started describing things without me having to ask. What the sunset looked like, what people were wearing, the expression on a waiter's face. He never made me feel like an inconvenience, never made me feel less than. We moved in together after a 1.5 years. The apartment was perfect, a 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, close enough to public transit that I could get around independently. Callum set everything up with me, not for me. We labeled things in Braille, organized the kitchen so I knew where everything lived, established routines that worked for both of us. Tuesday nights were our night. We'd order Thai food from the same place, and Callum would read to me, not audiobooks, but him actually reading aloud from whatever novel we were working through. His voice would fill the apartment, and I'd curl up against him on the couch, and everything felt safe. Everything felt right. Sunday mornings, he made pancakes, terrible, lumpy pancakes that he insisted were rustic, and I'd pretend they were good while secretly drowning them in syrup. He knew I was pretending. I knew he knew. It was our thing. I trusted Callum completely, with my heart, with my home, with my safety. That trust was absolute, unquestioning. I never imagined it could be used against me. I lost my vision when I was 16. A car accident. I was a passenger. The other driver ran a red light, and I spent 3 weeks in the hospital with traumatic brain injury and optic nerve damage. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. My parents said it was a miracle. I said it felt like my life had ended, but it hadn't. It had just changed. My father, Roland, became obsessively protective after the accident. He wanted to bubble wrap me, wanted to keep me home where nothing else could hurt me. My mother, Miriam, was gentler but equally worried. They both struggled to accept that I could still have a full, independent life. Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht, my father would say constantly. It's German. His parents were immigrants, and certain phrases stuck in our family. It means better safe than sorry, or more literally, caution is better than hindsight. He'd say it every time I wanted to do something independently, take the bus alone, go to college, move out. I fought against that mindset with everything I had. I refused to let blindness become my entire identity. I learned screen readers and voice commands. I got a guide dog for a while, though we eventually decided it wasn't the right fit. I mastered my iPhone's accessibility features until I could navigate it as fast as anyone with sight. I learned to cook, to clean, to exist in the world without needing constant assistance. People always ask how I use technology. They see me typing on my laptop or scrolling through my phone and assume I'm lying about being blind. They don't understand that screen readers exist, that voice-over technology can read every word on a screen aloud, that I can navigate Reddit or write documents or answer emails just like anyone else, just differently. My independence was everything to me. It was proof that the accident hadn't won, that I was still Thea, still whole, still capable. So when Callum told me his best friends were moving into the apartment directly across from ours, I didn't see it as a threat. I saw it as a good thing. He was so excited. Garrett and Vincent were his college buddies, friends he'd known for over a decade. They'd all lost touch when life got busy, and now they were all in the same city again, in the same building. Callum talked about them constantly in the weeks leading up to their move-in day. "You're going to love them," he said. "Garrett's hilarious. Vincent's the smartest guy I know. We used to stay up until 4 a.m. just talking about everything and nothing." They moved in 8 months ago, right at the beginning of winter. Callum helped them carry boxes, and I made cookies as a welcome gesture. When Callum brought them over to introduce us, they seemed nice enough. Garrett was loud, friendly, cracked jokes constantly. Vincent was quieter, more observant, asked me questions about my accessibility tech that seemed genuinely curious rather than condescending. "It's so great that Callum has you," Garrett said that first day. "Someone to take care of." I should have caught that. The phrasing, someone to take care of. Not someone to share life with, someone to take care of. But I smiled and thanked him and didn't think about it again. Within a week, they were coming over constantly. Every evening, it seemed like Garrett and Vincent were in our apartment, drinking Callum's beer, watching games, hanging out. At first, I didn't mind. Callum was happy. He lit up when they were around, laughing at inside jokes I didn't understand, reminiscing about college adventures I wasn't part of. Then Callum mentioned that he'd given them a spare key. "Just in case," he said. "You know, if there's an emergency and I'm not home, they're right across the hall. It makes sense." I felt a small flutter of unease, but I pushed it down. That was reasonable, wasn't it? Emergency contacts, neighbors who could help if something went wrong. "They already said they'd check in on you when I'm at work," Callum continued, "just to make sure you're okay, see if you need anything. Isn't that great?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, that's really thoughtful." The first few times Garrett and Vincent came over when Callum wasn't home, it was fine. Awkward, but fine. They'd knock, ask if I needed anything, make small talk for a few minutes, then leave. I appreciated the gesture, even if their presence made me slightly uncomfortable in ways I couldn't articulate. But the visits got longer, more frequent, and the conversations started to change. "You know, you're actually really pretty," Garrett said one afternoon, maybe 3 weeks into this new routine. "Like for a blind girl." I laughed it off. "Thanks, I think?" "No, seriously," Vincent added. "You take good care of yourself." That's not always the case with disabled people. That's what he meant. I felt my face flush, but I smiled anyway, made some joke I don't even remember, and changed the subject. The comments kept coming. Small ones, easy to dismiss individually, but building into something that made my skin crawl. "Does Callum know how lucky he is?" "If I had a girlfriend like you, I'd never leave the house." "You're so trusting, that's really sweet." They started touching me casually, a hand on my shoulder, fingers brushing my arm when they handed me something. Nothing I could point to and say, "That's inappropriate," but everything that made me tense up whenever I heard their voices. They'd ask strange questions. What was it like not being able to see someone's face? Did I ever wonder what they really looked like? Did I ever get confused about who was who? Like, could you tell if it was Callum walking through the door or someone else? Vincent asked once. I'd know, I said firmly. Different footsteps, different presence, different voice. But before someone speaks, Garrett pressed, in that moment when you just hear the door open, you wouldn't know, would you? The question made my stomach turn, but I laughed it off. I guess not, but people usually announce themselves. They both found that hilarious for reasons I didn't understand. The visits started happening even when Callum wasn't at work. They'd come over for dinner, stay until midnight, treat our apartment like their own. I'd retreat to the bedroom with a headache, and Callum would apologize later but say, "They're my best friends, I've missed them." Can you just be patient? So, I was patient. I swallowed my discomfort. I told myself I was being oversensitive, that I wasn't used to guy humor, that they didn't mean anything by it. But 3 weeks before that day on the couch, 3 weeks before the rape jokes and the realization that I was in actual danger, I finally tried to tell Callum how I felt. We were getting ready for bed. He was in the bathroom brushing his teeth, and I was sitting on the edge of the mattress, gathering courage. Callum, can I talk to you about something? Sure, babe. His voice was muffled by toothpaste. It's about Garrett and Vincent. I heard the water turn off. He came out of the bathroom, and I felt the mattress dip as he sat beside me. What about them? I took a breath. They make me uncomfortable. Silence. Then, uncomfortable how? I don't know exactly. The things they say, the way I don't know. Something feels off. Off. His voice had changed. There was an edge to it now, something defensive. Thea, they're trying to help you. They're checking in on you, keeping you company when I can't be here. That's what friends do. I know, but you know how awkward people get around blind people, he continued, and I could hear him standing up, pacing. They're probably just trying too hard to make you comfortable. They're good guys. I've known them for over 10 years. Callum, I'm just saying that some of the things they've said, like what? Give me an example. I floundered. What could I say? That Garrett said I was pretty for a blind girl. That Vincent asked weird questions about whether I could tell people apart. That they touched me in ways that felt wrong but weren't technically inappropriate. It all sounded so small when I tried to put it into words. I don't feel comfortable with them having a key to our apartment. Thea. He sighed, and I could hear the frustration. They live right across the hall. That key is for emergencies. You're being paranoid. The word stung. Paranoid. Maybe you're right, I said quietly. I'm sorry. He kissed the top of my head. It's okay. I get that you're not used to having people around so much, but they're harmless. They're my brothers, basically. Just give them a chance, okay? I nodded. Okay. That night, lying in bed next to Callum, listening to his breathing even out as he fell asleep, I tried to convince myself he was right. I was being oversensitive. I was misreading social cues. My father's voice echoed in my head. Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht. But I pushed it away. I decided to just deal with it, to be patient, to give them a chance. That decision almost destroyed me. The day it happened was a Tuesday. One of those unremarkable spring afternoons where nothing seems different, nothing warns you that your entire world is about to tilt on its axis. Callum left for work at 7:30 that morning like always. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, said he'd pick up groceries on the way home. I heard the door close, the lock click, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Our Tuesday, our routine, our safe, predictable life. I made coffee, ate yogurt with granola, settled onto the couch with my laptop. I had freelance work to finish, transcription editing, something I could do from home with my screen reader. The robotic voice narrated text to me while I made corrections, noting timestamps, fixing errors, mundane work, comforting work. Around 2 in the afternoon, I was deep into a particularly tedious audio file when I heard the key slide into the lock. My first thought was that Callum had forgotten something. My second thought was surprise that he'd come home in the middle of the day. My third thought, the one that made me smile, was that maybe he'd decided to surprise me, take an early afternoon off, spend time together. "Hey babe, you're home early." "Hey Thea." The voice wasn't Callum's. It was Garrett's, bright and cheerful, and before I could process that, I heard Vincent's laugh. Not just one set of footsteps entering my apartment. 2. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted. My hands went cold on my laptop keyboard. "Callum's not home," I said, fighting to keep my voice normal, casual. "He won't be back until after 5. "We know." That was Vincent. I heard them moving deeper into the apartment, and then I felt the couch cushions shift as they sat down, not across from me, on either side of me, boxing me in. "We actually wanted to talk to you," Garrett said. "Alone." The way he emphasized that last word made every nerve in my body light up with warning signals. This was wrong. This felt wrong. But what could I say? They were Callum's best friends. They had a key. They'd been coming over for months. "Oh," I managed. "What about?" They made small talk first, asked about my work, commented on the weather, mentioned something Callum had said the night before. I answered on autopilot, my fingers still resting on my laptop keyboard like it was an anchor to normalcy. Minutes passed. 5, maybe 10. I kept waiting for them to get to the point, to explain why they'd let themselves in, why they wanted to talk to me alone. Then Garrett's voice changed, took on a tone I'd never heard before, almost playful, but with something underneath it that made my stomach clench. "You know, Vincent and I were talking about something interesting the other day." "Yeah?" I heard myself say. "Yeah?" Vincent now, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "About how easy certain things would be, given your situation. My situation. My blindness." I felt my shoulders tense. "Like what?" I shouldn't have asked. Some part of me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. Garrett laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Like, "We could just walk in here, right? Pretend to be Callum, use our key, come in quietly, and you wouldn't know it was us." My blood turned to ice. "Not until we spoke anyway," Vincent added, like he was discussing the weather. "Before that, you'd just assume it was him, your boyfriend, coming home to you." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My hands had gone numb on the keyboard. I tried to laugh, tried to make it sound like I thought this was a joke, some stupid hypothetical. "That's a weird thing to think about." "Is it, though?" Garrett's voice was closer now. I could feel his presence, could smell his cologne. "I mean, it's true, isn't it? You wouldn't know, not until it was too late." "And here's the really interesting part," Vincent continued, like this was some intellectual exercise, some fascinating philosophical question. "Let's say one of us did that, came in, pretended to be Callum, and things happened. You know, things. Things. He meant sex. He meant rape. He was talking about raping me while I thought it was my boyfriend, and he was calling it things. If you got pregnant," Vincent went on, his voice almost cheerful now, "you wouldn't even know. You couldn't tell that the baby didn't look like Callum. It could look exactly like me or Garrett, and you'd never see it. You'd raise our kid thinking it was his." They both laughed. Actually laughed, like this was the funniest thing they'd ever considered. I sat frozen on my couch between these two men who had just described in detail how they could rape me and get away with it. My heart was slamming against my ribs so hard I thought they must be able to hear it. My hands were shaking. My mouth had gone completely dry. I forced words out through a throat that felt like it was closing. "That's really weird to joke about." "Who says we're joking?" Garrett said, and then he laughed again. I'm kidding, but you have to admit, it's true. The biology of it all. Pretty wild when you think about it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab my phone and call someone, anyone, call Callum, call the police, call my father, but I couldn't move. I sat there like a statue while these men my boyfriend had invited into our home, given keys to our apartment, asked to check on me, laughed about how vulnerable I was. Anyway, Vincent said, like he was wrapping up a normal conversation about sports or movies. Just something we were discussing. Interesting to think about, right? Sure, I whispered, because what else could I say? They stayed for another 30 minutes. 30 minutes that felt like 30 hours. They talked about normal things, a game they were planning to watch, something funny that happened at Vincent's work, asking if Callum had mentioned the weekend plans. They acted like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just detailed exactly how they could violate me, and I'd never know. I answered when spoken to. I laughed when it seemed expected. I played the part of normal, friendly Thea while my mind screamed at me to make them leave, to get them out, to run. When they finally stood to go, Garrett touched my shoulder. Just a brief touch, his hand resting there for a second. "See you tomorrow, Thea," he said. Tomorrow. They'd be back tomorrow. They had a key. They could come back whenever they wanted. The door closed. I heard their footsteps in the hallway, heard their door open and close across the hall. And then silence. I sat there in that silence, shaking so hard my laptop nearly slid off my knees. My hands were ice cold. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped bands around my ribs and was pulling them tighter and tighter. "What the fuck just happened?" I said out loud to my empty apartment. My mind tried to rationalize. They were kidding. It was a joke. A stupid, gross, inappropriate joke, but just a joke. They wouldn't actually do anything. They were Callum's friends. They'd known him for 10 years. But my gut knew better. My gut was screaming that this wasn't a joke. This was a threat. A detailed, specific threat disguised as casual conversation. They'd just told me exactly how they could rape me, and they'd laughed while doing it. My father's voice echoed in my head. Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht. Better safe than sorry. How many times had I dismissed that advice? How many times had I insisted I didn't need extra caution, that I could handle myself, that being careful was the same as being afraid? With shaking hands, I opened my laptop. My fingers fumbled on the keys as I navigated to Reddit, to one of the advice forums I sometimes browsed. I needed to know if I was overreacting. I needed someone to tell me this was normal, that I was being paranoid, that everything was fine. Or I needed someone to confirm what my gut already knew. I typed out the whole story, the months of uncomfortable visits, the inappropriate comments, today's conversation. I included every detail I could remember, every word they'd said. My hands were still shaking as I hit submit. The responses started coming in within minutes. "This is not normal. These men are predators. Tell your boyfriend now. You are in danger. Please get out of that apartment. Change your locks immediately. Do not let them in again." Comment after comment, all saying the same thing, all confirming what I'd been too afraid to acknowledge. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't being paranoid. I had been living across the hall from two men who had been testing my boundaries for months, escalating slowly, seeing how much they could get away with. And today, they'd finally shown me exactly what they were thinking. I sat there reading those comments, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking. I'd been in danger for months. Months! And I'd dismissed every warning sign, every uncomfortable moment, every time my instincts screamed at me to be careful. I'd been so determined not to be the helpless blind girl who needed protection that I'd ignored the fact that I actually did need protection. From men I'd welcomed into my home, from men my boyfriend trusted completely. The apartment felt different now, contaminated. Every sound made me jump. The silence felt threatening instead of peaceful. I kept thinking about that key, about how they could open my door whenever they wanted, about how I wouldn't know they were there until they spoke, or until they didn't speak. Callum would be home in 3 hours. 3 hours alone in this apartment, knowing that Garrett and Vincent were right across the hall, knowing they could come back any time, knowing what they'd said. I pulled my knees up to my chest, wrapped my arms around them, and tried to breathe, tried to think, Tried to figure out what to do next. I had to tell Callum, tonight, as soon as he got home. No matter how tired he was, no matter how much he trusted his friends, I had to make him understand that something was very, very wrong. I just prayed he would believe me. Callum came home at 7:15. I'd been sitting on the couch for hours, my laptop closed beside me, my phone clutched in my hand. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my whole body tensed. Every door that opened or closed made my heart race. But when I finally heard his key in our lock, his particular rhythm of unlocking the door, I felt a wave of relief so intense it made me dizzy. "Callum," I said, standing up before he'd even closed the door behind him. "We need to talk. Something happened today and I—" "Not now, Thea." His voice was sharp, exhausted. I heard him drop his keys on the entry table harder than usual, heard his bag hit the floor with a thud. "I've had the worst fucking day. Morrison blamed me for his screw-up in front of the entire team. I've got a migraine that won't quit. And I just need to go to bed." I stood there, frozen, my prepared words evaporating. He was already moving past me toward the bedroom. "But Callum, it's important. Your friends— Can we please not do this tonight?" He stopped, and I could hear the frustration in his voice, the edge of anger that wasn't directed at me but was close enough to make me flinch. Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm exhausted. I can't deal with anything else today." I should have insisted. I should have said, "No, this can't wait. You need to hear this right now." But I heard how tired he was, how stressed, and some part of me, that part that had spent 3 years loving him, that wanted to take care of him, made me nod. "Okay," I whispered. "Tomorrow. Thank you." He kissed the top of my head as he passed, already pulling off his work shirt. "I'm sorry. I know you needed to talk. Tomorrow, I promise. I'll actually listen." 20 minutes later, I heard his breathing even out into sleep. He'd fallen asleep almost instantly, the way he always did when he was truly exhausted. And I lay there beside him in the dark, wide awake, my phone in my hands, kicking myself for not forcing the conversation. What if tomorrow was too late? I pulled up Reddit on my phone, the screen reader volume turned down to almost a whisper so it wouldn't wake Callum. More comments had come in on my post, dozens of them now, and they all said the same thing. "You need to tell your boyfriend immediately. Get out of that apartment, tonight. File a police report. This is a credible threat. Document everything. Save all messages. Write down dates and times. Keep records." That last comment made me freeze. Document everything. I hadn't documented anything. I had no proof, no evidence, nothing but my word against theirs. And I already knew how that would go. Callum had dismissed my discomfort 3 weeks ago. Garrett and Vincent could easily claim I'd misunderstood, taken things the wrong way, been too sensitive. It would be 2 statements against 1, their word against mine. And I was the blind girl who couldn't see their faces, couldn't read their expressions, couldn't provide the kind of concrete evidence that people believed. Another comment caught my attention. "Your boyfriend needs to know, but also someone else should know. Parents, friends, anyone. If something happens and only your boyfriend knows and he doesn't believe you?" My blood ran cold. What if I told Callum tomorrow and he didn't believe me? What if he thought I was overreacting again, being paranoid again? What if he told Garrett and Vincent and they came up with some explanation that made sense to him and suddenly I was the problem? I needed someone else to know, someone who would believe me no matter what. I waited until I heard Callum's alarm go off the next morning, waited through his shower and his rushed breakfast, waited until I heard the door close behind him at 7:30. Then I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called my parents. My mom answered on the 3rd ring. "Thea? Sweetheart? Is everything okay?" Just hearing her voice made my throat tight. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Is Dad there?" "He's right here. Let me put you on speaker. What's wrong?" I told them everything. The months of uncomfortable visits, the escalating comments, yesterday's conversation, every detail I could remember. My mother made small sounds of distress throughout, and my father said nothing until I finished. Then his voice came through, tight with barely controlled anger. Pack a bag, right now. I'm getting in the car and I'm coming to get you. Dad, no. I need to talk to Callum first. I need him to understand what's happening. I just wanted someone else to know. In case something happens. In case something happens? Roland's voice rose. Thea, something has already happened. Those men threatened you, in your own home. You need to leave, now. I can't just leave without talking to Callum. He deserves to know why. He deserves a chance to… Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht. My father's voice cracked. How many times have I said that to you? Better safe than sorry, Thea. You don't wait until something worse happens. You don't give predators the benefit of the doubt. Roland. My mother's voice calm but firm. Thea, honey, listen to me. We're not going to force you to leave, but we need you to promise us something. If anything at all, makes you uncomfortable today, you call us immediately. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Just call. I promise. And Thea? My father again, and his voice had shifted from anger to something that scared me more, fear. Lock your door. Don't let them in. If they try to come in, you call 911 first and us second. Do you understand? I understand. We love you, my mother said. We're here. We're not going anywhere. You're not alone in this. After we hung up, I sat on the couch in the silence of my apartment, phone still in my hand. At least someone knew now. At least if something happened, my parents would know to ask questions, to push for answers, to not just accept whatever story got told. But I still had 8 hours until Callum came home. 8 hours alone in this apartment. I thought about leaving. Going to a coffee shop, a library, somewhere public where Garrett and Vincent couldn't corner me. But the nearest places were a 20-minute bus ride away, and navigating public transit while this anxious felt impossible. I could call a rideshare, but to where? To do what? Sit in a Starbucks all day waiting for my boyfriend to get off work? I decided to stay home, lock the door from the inside. If they knocked, I just wouldn't answer. Simple. I walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt, that solid click of metal into metal that should have made me feel secure. But even as I did it, my father's words echoed in my head. They have a key. My hands went cold on the doorknob. They had a key that worked on the deadbolt just like it worked on the regular lock. I could lock the door all I wanted, but they could unlock it just as easily. I was trapped. In my own apartment, in my own home, I was trapped. I couldn't leave easily, and I couldn't keep them out. The 4 walls that had always felt safe now felt like a cage. I backed away from the door and sat down on the couch, pulling my knees up to my chest. My phone was in my hand, my parents' number ready to dial. The apartment was silent except for my own breathing, which sounded too loud in my ears. All I had to do was wait. Wait for Callum to come home. Wait for the chance to tell him everything. Wait for him to believe me, to protect me, to make this right. But waiting had never felt so dangerous. I listened to every sound in the building, footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, voices muffled through walls. Every sound could be them. Every sound could be that key sliding into my lock. The morning stretched ahead of me, each minute feeling like an hour, and all I could do was sit there and wait and hope that my father's warning wouldn't come true. Hope that better safe than sorry wasn't advice I was learning too late. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I tried to work, tried to focus on the transcription files still waiting on my laptop, but my hands shook too much to type accurately. I tried to listen to a podcast, but couldn't concentrate on the words. Mostly, I just sat there on the couch, phone in my hand, listening to every sound in the building with my heart racing. At 1 o'clock, I heard it, the key sliding into the lock. My entire body went rigid, every muscle tensed, my breath caught in my throat. No, I thought. Please, no. The deadbolt turned, that solid metallic click that should have kept me safe, but their key worked just as well as mine, and the lock disengaged like it was nothing. The door opened. "Hey, Thea!" Garrett's voice. Cheerful, casual, like this was any normal visit. I heard 2 sets of footsteps enter. The door closed, and I sat there frozen on my couch, my phone clutched so tightly in my hand that my knuckles ached. "Callum's not home," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange, thin and high. "He's at work." "We know." That was Vincent. I heard them moving closer, heard the couch cushions shift as they sat down. Not across from me this time, on either side of me again, just like yesterday, bracketing me in. That's exactly why we're here. Something about the way he said it, the tone, the certainty, made ice flood through my veins. "I think you guys should go." I tried to sound firm, but my voice was shaking. "I'm busy. I have work to do." "Work can wait," Garrett said. I could feel him now, closer than he should be. Could feel the heat of his body beside me. "We wanted to continue our conversation from yesterday. You seemed a little uncomfortable with it." "I wasn't uncomfortable," I lied. "I just thought it was a weird topic." "See, that's the thing." Vincent's voice was coming from my other side. "We don't think you really understood what we were saying." "I understood fine." "Did you, though?" Garrett again. "Because we've been thinking about it a lot, about how easy it would be, about how you'd never really know." My heart was slamming against my ribs. My hands had gone numb. I tried to stand up, tried to move away, but Garrett's hand was suddenly on my shoulder. "Don't touch me," I said, jerking away from his hand. Vincent laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the friendly laughs I'd heard over the past 8 months. "Come on, don't be like that, we're just talking." But they weren't just talking. Garrett's hand was back on my shoulder, heavier this time, pushing me back down onto the couch when I tried to stand. Vincent's hand landed on my knee, and I flinched so hard I nearly dropped my phone. "Stop," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "Please stop." "Relax, Thea." Garrett's voice was right next to my ear now. "We're not going to hurt you. We just want you to understand how vulnerable you are, how much you need people like us looking out for you." His hand moved from my shoulder to my arm, fingers pressing into my skin. Vincent's hand slid higher on my leg, and I felt bile rise in my throat. "You're so soft," Vincent said, like he was commenting on the weather. "Does Callum tell you that? How soft you are?" I tried to pull away, tried to stand again, but there were hands on me now, holding me down. One on my shoulder, one on my arm, one on my thigh, one on my other leg. 4 hands. 2 men. And I couldn't see their faces, couldn't see what they were planning to do next, could only feel their weight pressing me into the couch. "Such pretty skin," Garrett said. His hand was on my collarbone now, fingers tracing patterns I couldn't see. "You really do take care of yourself." "Stop," I said again, louder this time. "Get off me. Stop touching me." "We're barely touching you," Vincent said, but his hands were on my waist now, sliding under the hem of my shirt. "This is nothing. Just imagine if we actually—" Something in me snapped. I screamed. Not a word, not a sentence, just a raw, primal sound of pure terror that ripped out of my throat with every ounce of air in my lungs. And when that breath ran out, I sucked in another and screamed again. Their hands jerked away from me like I'd burned them. "Jesus, Thea, relax." Garrett's voice, suddenly panicked instead of predatory. "We were just messing around," Vincent added, and I could hear them scrambling up from the couch, backing away. But I couldn't stop screaming. The sound kept tearing out of me, echoing off the walls of my apartment, every suppressed moment of fear and discomfort and violation from the past 8 months pouring out in that single, sustained note of terror. "Fuck, she's losing it." Garrett's voice farther away now. "We need to go." "Thea, come on, calm down. Go!" I finally managed to scream an actual word. "Get out! Get out!" I heard them run for the door, heard it slam open, heard their footsteps pounding down the hallway, heard their apartment door across the hall open and slam shut. And then silence. I was alone. I curled up on the couch, hugging my knees to my chest, and sobbed. My whole body was shaking so violently I thought I might fall apart. I couldn't catch my breath, couldn't stop crying, couldn't think beyond the feeling of their hands on me, their voices in my ear, their weight pressing me down. They'd touched me, actually touched me, put their hands on my body without my consent, held me down, violated me in my own home while laughing about how vulnerable I was. I don't know how long I sat there crying. Minutes, maybe. Hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. All I knew was that I was alone and terrified, and I couldn't make my body stop shaking. The knock on my door was so gentle, I almost didn't hear it over my own sobbing. "Hello?" A woman's voice, elderly, concerned. "Dear, are you all right?" I couldn't answer, couldn't form words. "I heard screaming," the voice continued. "I'm from upstairs. Mrs. Delacroix, I just want to make sure you're okay." I tried to speak, but all that came out was another sob. "Can you open the door, sweetheart?" I should have been more careful. I should have asked who she was, verified somehow. But something in her voice, the genuine concern, the motherly warmth, made me stumble to the door on shaking legs. I fumbled with the deadbolt, nearly dropped it twice, finally got it open. "Oh, honey." Mrs. Delacroix's voice was right there, close and kind. I felt her hand on my arm, gentle where Garrett's had been bruising. "You're shaking like a leaf. Let's get you somewhere safe, okay? Can you come with me?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She guided me out of my apartment, and I heard her pull the door closed behind us. We went to the stairs. I heard the door to the stairwell open, and she helped me up one flight, her hand steady on my elbow, talking to me the whole time in that soothing voice. "That's it. One step at a time. You're doing great. Almost there." Her apartment smelled like lavender and tea. She guided me to what felt like a soft armchair and wrapped something warm around my shoulders. A blanket, I realized. She'd wrapped me in a blanket. "I'm going to make you some tea," she said. "You just sit there. Take your time." I heard her moving around her kitchen, the sound of water running, a kettle being filled, and I just sat there in her armchair, wrapped in her blanket, and cried. Great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the violation, for the fear, for the 8 months of ignoring my instincts. I cried for the trust I'd lost, for the safety I'd never really had. Mrs. Delacroix didn't try to stop me. She brought the tea. I heard the cup being set down on a table beside me, and then I felt her sit down nearby. She didn't touch me, didn't crowd me, just sat there while I fell apart. After what felt like forever, my sobs finally slowed to hiccups, then to shuddering breaths, then to silence. "Here," Mrs. Delacroix said softly, "drink some tea, it'll help." I reached for the cup with shaking hands. It was warm, sweet chamomile. I took a sip, then another. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. "You don't have to thank me, dear, and you don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, but I'm here to listen if you need to talk." And somehow, sitting in this stranger's apartment, wrapped in her blanket and drinking her tea, I felt safe enough to tell her. Everything. The whole story poured out of me, Callum's friends moving in across the hall, the escalating discomfort, the rape jokes, today's assault. She listened to all of it, occasionally making small sounds of sympathy or anger, but mostly just holding my hand and letting me speak. "You did nothing wrong," she said when I finally finished. Her voice was fierce, protective. "Do you hear me? Nothing. Those men are predators. What they did to you, what they've been doing to you, that's assault. That's criminal." I should have said something sooner. I should have... No. She squeezed my hand. "You did exactly what you needed to do to survive. You screamed when it mattered. You saved yourself, Thea. You are so incredibly brave." I started crying again, but softer this time. Relief tears instead of terror tears. "When does your boyfriend come home?" Mrs. Delacroix asked. "Around 5:30. I heard her settle back in her chair. "Then I'll wait with you until then. You're not going back to that apartment alone." We sat together for nearly 2 hours. She told me about her life. 50 years of marriage to a man who'd passed 3 years ago, children who lived across the country, a long career as a nurse. She told me stories that made me laugh despite everything, stories that reminded me that good people existed, that not everyone was dangerous. Around 5:15, she helped me back downstairs to my apartment. I heard her check all the rooms, make sure no one was there before she let me sit down. "Your boyfriend will be home soon." she said. And then you'll tell him everything, yes? Yes, I promised. Good. And Thea? I'm in apartment 3B. You have my number now. You call me anytime, day or night. Do you understand? I understand. She stayed with me, sitting on my couch, talking quietly about nothing important, until we both heard the key in the lock at 5:30. Callum walked in talking. Hey babe, sorry about last night. I was a complete ass. I brought Chinese food as an apology, and I'm all yours tonight, I promise. He stopped. I heard the grocery bags rustle as he froze in place. Thea? Who's this? My throat was so tight I could barely speak. Callum, we need to talk. Okay. His voice had changed, gone cautious. What's going on? Mrs. Delacroix stood up. I'm Mrs. Delacroix from upstairs. Your girlfriend had a very frightening experience today, and she needs to tell you about it. I'm here as a witness to what happened. A witness? Callum's footsteps came closer. I heard him set the bags down on the coffee table. Thea, what happened? Are you okay? I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay for months. But now finally I was going to tell him everything. Your friends, I started, and my voice cracked. Garrett and Vincent, they came over today while you were at work. Okay. Still cautious, still not understanding. They used their key to let themselves in even though my door was locked, and Callum, they assaulted me. Silence. Complete, frozen silence. What? I tried to tell you yesterday, I said, and now I was crying again. I tried to tell you 3 weeks ago. Your friends have been making me uncomfortable for months. They've been saying inappropriate things, touching me, and yesterday they told me, they described in detail how they could rape me, and I'd never know it wasn't you until it was too late. They said what? His voice had gone from confused to horrified in an instant, and today they came back. They sat on either side of me and they put their hands on me and I told them to stop and they wouldn't and I couldn't finish. The sobs took over. I felt Callum drop to his knees in front of me, felt his hands take mine. Thea. Oh my God, Thea, I'm so sorry, I'm so fucking sorry. I heard her screaming, Mrs. Delacroix said quietly. From upstairs. It was the kind of scream that makes your blood run cold. When I got here, she was in shock. Those men violated her in her own home. In your home. I'm going to kill them. Callum's voice was shaking. I'm going to fucking kill them. He was already standing, already heading for the door. Callum, don't... I started, but he was gone. The door slammed behind him. Mrs. Delacroix moved closer, sat beside me, took my hand. He needs to do this, she said quietly. From across the hall, I heard Callum pounding on a door. Open this fucking door! The door opened. Garrett's voice. Hey man, what's... The sound of impact, flesh hitting flesh, something crashing, then yelling, so much yelling I couldn't make out individual words, more crashing, more impacts, the sounds of a fight, grunting, furniture breaking, bodies hitting walls. I sat frozen on my couch, Mrs. Delacroix holding my hand, listening to my boyfriend fight the men who'd assaulted me. You fucking touched her? Callum's voice clear and furious. You put your hands on her? Vincent's voice, defensive. It wasn't like that. You described raping her. Another crash. You made her feel unsafe in her own home. More chaos, more yelling. Then, suddenly, silence. A door slammed. Footsteps in the hallway. Our door opened. Callum came in breathing hard, his knuckles red and already swelling. His shirt was torn at the collar. But he didn't look hurt. He looked furious and devastated and determined all at once. We're leaving, he said. His voice was shaking with barely contained rage. Pack a bag, right now. We're not staying in this building another night. Callum, I'm calling out of work. He already had his phone out, was already dialing. Family emergency. I need the rest of the week off, starting immediately. He turned to Mrs. Delacroix. Thank you for helping her. Thank you for being there when I wasn't. Take care of her, Mrs. Delacroix said. And young man, you did the right thing. Not many men would have believed her so completely. I should have believed her weeks ago, Callum said, his voice breaking. She tried to tell me and I dismissed her. I let this happen. You're believing her now, Mrs. Delacroix said firmly. That's what matters. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Callum threw clothes into duffel bags with shaking hands, moving through our apartment like a hurricane. He grabbed my laptop, my phone charger, my medications. He packed without asking what I needed because he already knew. 3 years together meant he knew where I kept everything, what I couldn't live without. Mrs. Delacroix helped me gather my things from the bathroom: toothbrush, toiletries, the specific soap I used. She moved calmly, methodically, while I stood there still shaking. "Do you have family?" she asked quietly. "Somewhere safe to go?" "My parents. About 3 hours away." "Good, that's good." Callum made phone calls while he packed. His boss, confused but agreeing to the time off. My parents, and I heard his voice crack as he told my father, "I'm bringing her home. I'm so sorry. I should have protected her." Within 20 minutes, we had 3 bags packed and were heading out the door. Mrs. Delacroix walked with us to the parking garage. "You have my number," she said, hugging me. "You call me. Let me know you're safe." "You saved my life," I whispered into her shoulder. She pulled back and I felt her hands on my face, warm and gentle. "No, dear, you saved yourself. You screamed. That took courage. That took strength. Don't you ever forget that." I hugged her again. This woman I'd known for less than 3 hours who had shown me more protection and care than I'd received in 8 months of dismissing my own instincts. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you so much." Callum loaded the bags into his car. I heard the trunk slam, heard him open the passenger door for me. Mrs. Delacroix helped me into the seat, made sure my seatbelt was fastened. "Drive safe," she said to Callum. "Take care of her." "I will," he promised. "I swear to God, I will." The drive to my parents' house was the longest 3 hours of my life. We drove in silence for the first 30 minutes, Callum's hand holding mine so tightly it almost hurt. I could feel him shaking, could hear his breathing, uneven and harsh. "I should have listened to you," he finally said, his voice thick with tears. 3 weeks ago, when you said they made you uncomfortable, I should have listened. I should have protected you." "You didn't know," I said, though part of me was still angry that he'd dismissed me so easily. "I should have known." His hand tightened on mine. "You told me you were uncomfortable and I told you they were good guys. I gave them a fucking key to our apartment. I let them have access to you. This is my fault." "Callum." "No, it is. I prioritized my friendship with them over your safety. I made you doubt yourself when you should have been trusting your instincts. I failed you." I didn't argue with him, because in some ways, he was right. He had failed me, but he was also here now, driving me to safety, believing me completely, ready to fight for me. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so fucking sorry." He apologized 17 times during that drive. I counted. My parents were waiting when we pulled into their driveway. I heard the car doors open before Callum had even turned off the engine, my mother's voice calling my name. My father's footsteps running toward us. Then I was out of the car and in my mother's arms, and she was holding me so tightly I could barely breathe, and I was crying again, and she was crying too, and my father was there too, his arms around both of us. "You're safe now," my mother kept saying. "You're safe. You're home." Over my mother's shoulder, I heard my father talking to Callum. His voice was tight, controlled. "What happened?" Callum told him. "Everything. The months of escalating behavior. Yesterday's threats. Today's assault. The fight. The emergency escape." "You did the right thing bringing her here," my father said when Callum finished. His voice was gruff, emotional. "Thank you for believing her. Thank you for protecting her." "I should have done it sooner," Callum said. "You're doing it now." That's what matters. My mother finally released me, and my father took her place, hugging me with the fierce protectiveness I'd spent years trying to escape, but now desperately needed. "Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht," he whispered into my hair. "I'm sorry you had to learn that lesson this way." "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner," I whispered back. We went inside. My childhood home that I hadn't lived in for 6 years but still knew every inch of. My mother guided me to the couch, wrapped me in an afghan, brought me tea. My father and Callum brought in our bags. And slowly, surrounded by people who loved me, in a place where I was truly safe, I finally stopped shaking. My childhood bedroom looked exactly the same as it had when I left for college 6 years ago. My mother had kept it frozen in time. The same bedspread, the same furniture arrangement, the same books on the shelves that I couldn't read anymore, but knew by heart from memory. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like regression, like I'd lost 6 years of independence in a single afternoon. The first 3 days, I barely left the bed. I slept in fits and starts, waking up gasping from nightmares where hands were on me and I couldn't see who they belonged to. I'd wake up screaming, and Callum would be there immediately. On the air mattress he'd set up beside my bed, his hands on mine, his voice cutting through the panic. "You're safe. You're at your parents' house. I'm here. You're safe." My mother brought meals on trays, soup, toast, things I didn't have to think about eating. She'd sit with me while I picked at the food, not pressuring me to eat more, just being present. My father came in less often, but I could hear him outside my door sometimes, pacing in the hallway like he was standing guard. Callum didn't leave my side. He slept on that air mattress every night, even though my parents had offered him the guest room. He was there when I woke up from nightmares. He was there when I had panic attacks that came out of nowhere, my heart racing, my chest tight, unable to breathe, convinced that Garrett and Vincent were somehow in the room even though I knew they weren't. "Breathe with me," Callum would say, his voice steady. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. That's it. You're doing great. Again." On the 4th day, my phone started buzzing with text messages. At first I thought it might be Mrs. Delacroix checking in, or maybe one of my few friends who Callum had told about the situation. But when my screen reader read the sender's name, my blood went cold. Garrett. "Thea, we need to talk. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding." I deleted it immediately, hands shaking. 2 minutes later, another one came through. "We were just joking around. You overreacted. You know we'd never actually hurt you." Then Vincent. "Tell Callum to chill out. We didn't do anything. He broke Garrett's nose and I'm pretty sure I have a cracked rib. We could press charges." The messages kept coming. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Each notification made me flinch like I'd been struck. "You're ruining our lives." It was just a misunderstanding. "People are asking questions and it's making us look bad." "Why are you doing this to us?" Callum's phone was going off too. I could hear it from across the room, a constant stream of notifications. He looked at the screen and his jaw tightened. "It's them," he said, "and some of our mutual friends asking what the hell happened." "What are they saying?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Garrett and Vincent are telling people you misunderstood their jokes, that you're oversensitive because you're blind and can't read social cues properly, that I attacked them unprovoked." The words hit me like a physical blow. They were twisting the narrative, making me the problem, using my blindness as evidence that I'd misinterpreted everything. Do people believe them? My voice was small. Some might, but not the people who matter. He came over to sit on the edge of my bed. "I'm telling everyone the truth, what they did, what I saw when I came home. Mrs. Delacroix is backing up your story. The people who actually know us will believe us." But I could hear the doubt in his voice, the fear that maybe, just maybe, Garrett and Vincent's version would be more believable than mine. The voicemails started the next day. Vincent's voice, trying to sound reasonable. "Thea, I think we need to sit down and talk about what happened. Clear the air. We obviously didn't communicate well and things got out of hand. Call me back." Then Garrett, angrier. "You know what you're doing is slander, right? We could sue you. We could press charges against Callum for assault. Is that what you want?" Each message felt like a violation. They had my number. They could reach me whenever they wanted. Even here, 3 hours away from that apartment, they could still get to me. My father found me crying in my room after listening to the 5th voicemail. He took my phone gently from my hands. "Enough," he said. "We're getting a lawyer. Today. This ends now." 2 days later, we sat in the office of Ms. Brennan, an attorney who specialized in harassment and assault cases. My father had called in every favor he had to get us an appointment this quickly. Ms. Brennan's voice was calm, professional, but warm. She asked me to tell her everything, and I did. The whole story again, every detail I could remember. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened and took notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, "What you've described is a clear pattern of escalating harassment, sexual assault, and stalking behavior. The text messages and voicemails they've sent since the incident are further evidence of harassment and witness intimidation." "Can we do anything legally?" my father asked. "Absolutely. We have strong grounds for restraining orders against both men. I'd also recommend filing a police report for the assault. Depending on what the DA decides, there could be criminal charges." My stomach clenched. Criminal charges? Would I have to testify? Possibly, but let's take this one step at a time. First, we get the restraining orders in place that will legally prohibit them from contacting you or coming within a certain distance of you. Any violation of that order is an automatic arrest. Over the next week, we built the case. Every text message saved and documented, every voicemail transcribed. Ms. Brennan contacted Mrs. Delacroix, who agreed immediately to provide a witness statement about what she'd heard and seen that day. I saw a doctor who documented my panic attacks and prescribed medication I was reluctant to take, but my mother insisted would help. That medical record became part of the evidence, proof of the psychological harm their actions had caused. My Reddit post, still up with hundreds of comments, served as contemporaneous evidence that I'd reached out for help the day after the rape jokes, before the assault ever happened. It showed a pattern of fear and concern that predated any potential misunderstanding. My parents' phone records showed I'd called them the morning of the assault, proving I'd told someone about my fear before anything happened. "This is a strong case," Ms. Brennan said. "I've seen restraining orders granted on far less evidence." The restraining orders were filed 2 weeks after we'd fled the apartment. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Garrett and Vincent would be served with the paperwork, notifying them of the claims and the hearing date. The day they were served, my phone exploded with messages again. "You filed a restraining order? Are you fucking kidding me? This is insane. We're going to fight this. You're going to regret this." Each message was documented, screenshotted, added to the growing file. They were so angry they weren't thinking straight, weren't realizing that every threatening text was more evidence against them. Ms. Brennan sent them a cease and desist letter, informing them that any further contact before the hearing would be considered harassment and used as evidence. The messages stopped after that, but the silence was almost worse than the notifications. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, kept anticipating their next move. Callum started telling people what really happened. Not the sanitized version Garrett and Vincent were spinning, but the truth. He told their mutual friends about the rape jokes, the assault, the text messages, the restraining orders. The response was swift and brutal. "Most people are horrified," Callum reported after spending an afternoon making phone calls. "Marcus said he's known Garrett for years and never would have thought he was capable of this." Lauren said she always felt uncomfortable around Vincent, but could never put her finger on why. "People are apologizing for not seeing it sooner." But some people didn't believe us. Some thought it was a misunderstanding, that I'd taken things the wrong way, that Callum had overreacted. Those people stopped being our friends. Word spread through their industry. They all worked in tech, and it was a surprisingly small community. Someone mentioned it to someone else, who mentioned it to someone else, and within a week, their professional reputations were in tatters. Vincent was let go from his job. The official reason was restructuring, but Callum heard through the grapevine that HR had gotten wind of the situation and decided he was a liability they couldn't afford. Garrett was put on probation at his company. No official reason given, but his team was reassigned and he was moved to a different department with no direct reports. They tried to reach out through fake numbers, text messages from unknown numbers that said things like, "This is getting out of hand. Can we please just talk?" But the writing style was distinctly theirs, and each message was documented and added to the file. The messages started shifting from angry to desperate. We're losing everything because of you. Our jobs are gone. Our friends won't talk to us. All because of a misunderstanding. Is this what you wanted? To destroy our lives? Half apologetic, half threatening, never taking real responsibility, always blaming me for the consequences of their own actions. Mrs. Delacroix called to check on me one afternoon, and she mentioned that she'd told some of the other neighbors in our old building what had happened. I hope that's all right, she said, but I thought people should know. There are other young women in that building who might be vulnerable. Thank you, I said. That's actually really important. The community response was overwhelming. People who'd lived in that building for years, who'd known Garrett and Vincent casually, suddenly understood things they'd dismissed before. The neighbor on the second floor remembered how Vincent had made comments about her daughter. The couple down the hall remembered Garrett trying to get them to give him a spare key for emergencies. Garrett and Vincent became pariahs in their own building. People stopped holding elevator doors, stopped making small talk in the laundry room, stopped acknowledging them at all. Their lives were unraveling, thread by thread, consequence by consequence. And while part of me felt guilty for the destruction, that ingrained instinct to be nice, to not cause problems, a larger part of me felt something else. Vindication. They'd told me I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive, that I couldn't read social cues because of my blindness. They'd made me doubt my own instincts, my own perception of reality. But I hadn't been wrong. Everyone else could see it now, too. The text messages, the voicemails, the witness statements, the pattern of behavior, it all confirmed what my gut had been screaming at me for months. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't oversensitive. I was a woman who had been systematically harassed and assaulted by two predators who thought my blindness made me an easy target. And now, finally, there would be consequences. The court date loomed ahead of us. 3 weeks after the assault, 2 weeks after filing. 3 weeks to prepare my testimony, to rehearse what I'd say, to steel myself for the moment I'd have to face them again. 3 weeks until the truth would be spoken in a courtroom, under oath, on the record. 3 weeks until justice. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and anxiety. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, Callum on one side of me and my mother on the other, waiting for our case to be called. My father paced nearby. I could hear his footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. Ms. Brennan sat across from us, occasionally rustling papers, reviewing her notes one last time. 3 weeks had passed since we'd filed the restraining orders. 3 weeks of preparation, of rehearsing my testimony, of steeling myself for this moment. And now it was here. They just arrived, Callum said quietly. Garrett and Vincent, with their lawyer. My whole body tensed. They were here, in this building, breathing the same air. For the first time since that day in my apartment, we were in the same space. You don't have to look at them, my mother whispered. You don't have to acknowledge them at all. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. Callum took one of them, squeezed gently. Case number 2847, Thea Morrison versus Garrett Chen and Vincent Bradford, a voice called from the courtroom doors. Ms. Brennan stood. That's us. Remember what we talked about. Just tell the truth. You've got this. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Ms. Brennan guided me to a table at the front, helped me sit down. I heard people filing in behind us. My parents, Callum, Mrs. Delacroix, who had driven 3 hours to be here, and on the other side of the room, Garrett and Vincent with their attorney. All rise for the Honorable Judge Hartley. We stood. I heard the judge enter, heard the rustle of robes, the creak of a chair as she sat. Please be seated. We're here today for a restraining order hearing. Ms. Brennan, you may proceed. Ms. Brennan called me to the stand first. I walked up carefully, hand trailing along the barrier, and was sworn in. My screen reader was set up on the stand beside me in case I needed to reference any documents. Ms. Morrison, please tell the court in your own words what led you to file for these restraining orders. I took a breath. Then I told the story again. All of it. The 8 months of escalating discomfort, the inappropriate comments about my body, my blindness, my vulnerability. The rape jokes, and I used that phrase directly, didn't soften it. The assault. The hands on my body, holding me down, violating me while I begged them to stop. My voice was steady, clear. I didn't cry, didn't falter. I just told the truth. When I finished, their lawyer stood for cross-examination. His voice was smooth, dismissive. "Ms. Morrison, isn't it true that you've had difficulty in the past distinguishing between friendly behavior and inappropriate behavior?" "No, that's not true." "But you're blind. You can't see facial expressions or body language. Isn't it possible that what you perceived as threatening was actually just awkward attempts at humor?" I felt anger flash through me, hot and sharp. I don't need to see someone's face to know when I'm being threatened. I don't need to see their body language to know when hands are on me without my consent. Blindness doesn't prevent me from knowing when I'm being violated. But surely, I heard them describe in detail how they could rape me, and I wouldn't know. I felt their hands holding me down when I tried to stand up. I heard them laugh while I begged them to stop. None of that requires sight to understand. The lawyer sat down. Judge Hartley made a note. Mrs. Delacroix testified next. She described the screaming she'd heard from upstairs, the kind of scream that makes your blood run cold, and Thea's condition when she'd found her, shaking, sobbing, in shock. "I've been a nurse for 40 years, Mrs. Delacroix said, her voice firm. "I know what trauma looks like. That girl had been assaulted." There's no question in my mind. Her credibility was unimpeachable. A 72-year-old former nurse with no connection to any of us except her decision to help someone in distress. The judge listened intently to every word. Callum testified about what I'd told him when he came home that day, about the pattern of behavior I'd reported weeks earlier that he'd dismissed. His voice broke when he talked about giving them the key. I trusted them. They were my best friends for over 10 years. I gave them access to my home and my girlfriend. They abused that trust in the worst way possible. They used that key to assault her while I was at work. Thinking she was safe, thinking they were helping her. Then it was Garrett and Vincent's turn. Their lawyer had them take the stand together, which Miss Brennan later told me was unusual, but allowed. "We were just joking around," Garrett said. His voice sounded different than I remembered, smaller, defensive. "We thought she understood we were kidding about the conversation she mentioned. We were just discussing hypotheticals, nothing serious." "And the physical contact?" Judge Hartley asked. "We might have touched her arm or shoulder," Vincent said. "Just friendly touches. We didn't realize it made her uncomfortable. She never said anything until she started screaming." "She asked you to stop," Ms. Brennan interjected, "multiple times. That's in her testimony and corroborated by witness accounts." Their lawyer presented their text messages and voicemails as evidence that they were trying to resolve a misunderstanding, but Ms. Brennan turned it back on them. "These messages show a pattern of harassment and witness intimidation. You're ruining our lives. You're going to regret this. These aren't the words of innocent men trying to clear up a misunderstanding. These are threats." Judge Hartley reviewed the evidence in silence. The text messages, the voicemails, Mrs. Delacroix's witness statement, the medical records documenting my panic attacks, my Reddit post from before the assault, the pattern, undeniable and clear. Finally, she spoke. "I find the testimony of Ms. Morrison to be credible and consistent. The evidence presented, including the respondent's own messages, supports her account of escalating harassment culminating in sexual assault. The witness testimony from Mrs. Delacroix corroborates the immediate aftermath of that assault." My heart was pounding. Callum's hand found mine under the table. Furthermore, the messages sent after the incident demonstrate a continued pattern of harassment and intimidation. The respondent's claim that this was a misunderstanding is not supported by the evidence. Judge Hartley looked directly toward where Garrett and Vincent sat. Restraining orders are granted against both Garrett Chen and Vincent Bradford. No contact with Ms. Morrison for a period of 5 years. This includes direct contact, indirect contact through third parties, electronic communication, or physical proximity. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from Ms. Morrison, her residence, and her workplace at all times. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and potential criminal charges. Do you understand? "Yes, Your Honor," their lawyer said when neither of them spoke. I felt something break open in my chest. Relief, vindication, justice. "Ms. Morrison," Judge Hartley said, her voice gentler now, "I want you to know that this court takes your safety seriously. If either of these men violates this order in any way, you call 911 immediately. You did the right thing by coming forward." "Thank you, Your Honor," I managed to say. We were dismissed. Ms. Brennan guided me out of the courtroom quickly, my parents and Callum surrounding me like a protective wall. I heard Garrett and Vincent behind us, their lawyer's voice low and urgent, but I didn't care what they were saying. It was over. I'd been heard, I'd been believed, and I was protected. Outside the courthouse, my father hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. So proud. 2 months later, Callum and I moved into a new apartment. Not in our old building, not even in the same neighborhood. A different part of the city entirely, somewhere Garrett and Vincent had no connection to, no reason to ever be. The apartment was perfect. Ground floor for easier access, in a building with a front desk security guard who logged all visitors. The landlord had no problem with us installing additional locks, with our requests for extra security measures. He seemed to understand without us having to explain everything. Our new neighbors were kind. The couple next door introduced themselves the day we moved in, bringing cookies and offering to help with boxes. The single mom across the hall asked if we needed anything, mentioned there was a great coffee shop 2 blocks away. Normal, friendly, appropriate interactions that didn't make my skin crawl. For the first time in almost a year, I felt safe in my own home. We changed everything. New locks that only Callum, my parents, and I had keys to. A personal alarm system that I could trigger from my phone if needed. The building's security cameras covered every entrance. I memorized the security guard's schedule, knew who would be at the desk at what times. Callum was different now, too. He'd started going to therapy, individual sessions to process his own guilt over what happened, and couples therapy with me to rebuild the trust that had been damaged when he dismissed my concerns. "I'll never ignore your gut again," he said one night as we lay in bed in our new apartment. "Never. If something feels wrong to you, that's enough. I don't need to understand why or see evidence. Your instincts are valid." It was a small thing, but it meant everything. Mrs. Delacroix visited once a month. She'd take the 3-hour drive and we'd spend the afternoon drinking tea and talking. She'd become family in a way I hadn't expected. Not a replacement for my parents, but something else. A grandmother figure, a friend, a reminder that good people existed in the world. "My guardian angel," I called her, and she'd laugh and say I'd saved myself. But we both knew the truth. She'd heard my scream and responded. She'd given me safety when I needed it most. I started therapy too, a trauma specialist who understood both sexual assault and the particular vulnerabilities of being a disabled woman. We worked on processing not just the assault itself, but the months of gaslighting myself, of dismissing my own instincts because I was so desperate to be normal, to not be the oversensitive blind girl. "Your blindness didn't make you vulnerable," my therapist said. "Their predatory behavior did. They would have been dangerous to any woman. Your blindness was just the excuse they used." It took time to internalize that. To understand that I wasn't at fault, that my disability wasn't a weakness that invited violation. 6 months after the assault, I started doing advocacy work, speaking to groups about safety for people with disabilities, about trusting your instincts, about the particular ways predators target vulnerable populations, sharing my story so other people wouldn't ignore the warning signs the way I had. I spent months telling myself I was overreacting, I'd say to these groups, that I was being too sensitive, that I couldn't read social cues properly because I couldn't see. But here's the truth. My body knew I was in danger. My instincts were screaming at me. I just wasn't listening. The advocacy work gave me purpose, turned my trauma into something useful, something that might protect someone else. And slowly, gradually, I started to feel like myself again. Not the same self I'd been before. That Thea was gone, destroyed by hands that shouldn't have touched her and words that shouldn't have been spoken. But this new Thea, scarred but stronger, careful but not afraid, she was someone I could be proud of. someone who had survived, someone who had fought back, someone who had trusted her voice when it mattered most. Today, I'm sitting in my new apartment, our apartment, with morning sunlight warming my face and the smell of coffee filling the air. It's been 8 months since that day, 8 months since I screamed loud enough to save myself, 8 months since everything changed. I hear Callum in the kitchen, humming off-key while he makes breakfast, probably those terrible pancakes he insists on perfecting. The sound makes me smile. These small, ordinary moments, they're everything now. Peace I never thought I'd feel again. My father was right all along. Vorsicht ist besser als Nachsicht. Better safe than sorry. But I've learned it means more than just being careful. It means trusting yourself when something feels wrong, even when you can't articulate why. Especially then. Your body knows danger before your mind wants to accept it. I spent months gaslighting myself because I didn't want to believe that people could be that predatory, that calculating. I didn't want to be the paranoid blind girl who saw threats where there were none, but my instincts were screaming the truth the entire time. I just wasn't listening. If I could tell anyone going through something similar, and I do now through my advocacy work, it would be this. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your disability doesn't make you less capable of recognizing danger. If anything, it makes you more attuned to the subtle cues others miss. The change in someone's voice, the weight of their presence, the way the air shifts when someone gets too close. Speak up even when you're afraid no one will believe you. Find allies. People like Mrs. Delacroix who hear your scream and respond. And remember that your safety matters more than anyone's comfort, more than keeping the peace, more than not making waves. Garrett and Vincent taught me something valuable, though they never intended to. They taught me that not everyone deserves trust, that some people see vulnerability as opportunity, that predators exist, and sometimes they're wearing the faces of people you're supposed to be able to trust. But they also taught me, accidentally, about the good people. Callum, who believed me when it mattered. Mrs. Delacroix, who heard my scream and ran toward it instead of away. My parents, who never once doubted my truth. Ms. Brennan, who fought for me. The judge who listened. The world has predators, but it also has protectors. And sometimes, the strongest protector is your own voice. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. That Thea was naive, trusting, desperate to prove she didn't need extra caution just because she couldn't see. This Thea, the one sitting here with coffee in her hands and sunshine on her face, is careful but not afraid, aware but not paranoid, scarred but stronger. The person I am today is who I was always meant to be, someone who learned that survival isn't just about escaping danger, it's about reclaiming your voice, your space, your right to feel safe in your own skin. And that's worth everything. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.